Welcome back to Parenting Shrink Wrapped. Melissa and Sam here, along with a guest that we're going to introduce in a couple minutes. But first, I wanted to say a story that has happened all too many times. So my boys play flag football, which is a super fun sport that's like up and coming. It's going to be in the Olympics, apparently. Like, great sport. Well, my kids are 12 and 8, so they're in two separate leagues and age divisions, which is great, but it's unbelievable how competitive, not that the kids are, but that the parents are on the sidelines.
Oh, amen.
It is like they are playing in the NFL, and this game is like the be-all, end-all Super Bowl game of the parents screaming from the sidelines. Mind you, they play flag football going the opposite way of the football field, and there's like 4 or 5 games taking place at the same time.
Right. This is like Pee-wee squirt football. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, I don't know, like 5-on-5 or 6-on-6. Like, there's not even a lot of kids out on the field at once. This is not like a full football team. And the parents go crazy. And sometimes to the point of actually being offensive to and unsportsmanly to the other team if their team is doing well or a call didn't go in their team's favor. And mind you, these are refs that are like getting paid like very minimal, and like they're like high school age kids that like wander around kind of like half paying attention with a whistle in their mouth.
We have a recording in our household that my husband made on the sidelines of one of my daughter's field hockey games. And it's of a woman that he was sitting near. I wasn't at the game, but he sent this to the family group chat. And all it was this woman shrieking. And I won't do it loudly because I have a microphone in my face here, but it was like, get her. Like, it was this high pitch, and he recorded several versions of this because this was happening throughout. I mean, it was so frankly, he had to move his space because that's just how she cheered. And but it was like, it was like she was in a panic the whole time. But you're right. Parent behavior on the sideline is a big, huge deal. And that is just one of the things that we will talk about today with our guest. And so shall we welcome, can I welcome Betsy Butterick? Because I had the pleasure of crossing paths with Betsy after she made an appearance at Bowdoin College, which is where my daughter plays field hockey. And she did some team building, communication, enhancement, just some work with the team and the coaches on improving belonging, improving how they operate together. And my daughter was like, this sounds like something my mom would like. This sounds, so I got a text after. She said, Mom, I dropped your name to the woman who worked with our team this past 2 days. She was awesome. You're going to love her. You should totally reach out to her. And so my daughter was responsible for this networking that happened. And boy, was she right. So I reached out to Betsy and Betsy, who received my cold call graciously and then set up a call with me. We spoke for a while last fall, and we've been playing tag, but we have people we know in common. I've put her in touch with other people I know in the athletic world, in the college athletic world, who also sing her praises. I can't wait for this conversation. So let me introduce our guest, Betsy Butterick. She is a former collegiate athlete and coach, and she has a background in psychology, not just sport. And she uses both of these to proactively help teams and organizations improve the quality of their connection at every level. We're talking between athletes, between coaches and athletes, coach to coach, administration. And her work helps to shorten the distance between intention and impact, one conversation at a time. And I would say her reach extends beyond sports also, just to parents, to educators. And so we're going to talk today about sports, of course, but the lessons that you're going to learn, I think are applicable to any type of communication. So Betsy Butterick, welcome to Parenting Shrink Wrapped.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And again, shout out to your daughter who came up after and was like, hey, this might be a little weird, but do you want to meet my mom? Like, can I introduce you to my mom? I was like, yes, like, let's do that. So yeah, like all credit goes to her, and thank you for having me on to chat about, oh, so many things. Parents these days. Let's start there.
Well, the reason you said parents these days is because you have a book called Kids These Days.
Yes, I
And
do.
right? Like and we'll get to that in a second. It's absolutely something we want to talk about. But when we say these days, it to me it feels like there's like we're making a qualitative remark about the nature of parents or the nature of kids and how it differs from how it used to be. Right?
Yes.
And would you
Yes.
say, as someone who spends so much time in the world of athletics, that sideline behavior and or the parent or athlete experience is different than it once was?
100%. And context matters always, right? So there's going to be nuances between age groups, between sports, depending on the environment or expectations or established norms within a sports culture. And yes, like kids these days, today's athletes, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, parents these days, parents of athletes, coaches these days. I mean, there's so many different, I'll say, adaptations that are happening in real time for the different subsets within a sports experience. So the coach, the parent, the athlete, specifically that triangle, the expectations, the unspoken expectations, the intensity, as you mentioned, especially in youth sports. And I've got a friend and colleague, John O'Sullivan, who had testified before Congress about, the state of peril within youth sports, and the call to specialize at such a young age, and just the amount of financial investment and time investment that it takes for parents. And they're being sold this, well, if you're really serious about it, or if you want your kid to play in college, then you have to do these things. And there's so much pressure on parents and young athletes. So I do see, from the time I was growing up playing sports to when I was coaching athletes that were, younger, and then now working with athletes of all sports, it's a lot has shifted. We'll say that.
I
Betsy,
feel that.
I've
Yeah.
noticed, like, from a young age, like, there are coaches recording, at age 8, 10 years of age that I've
Yeah.
seen, like, my own kids in sports, and I'm like, you're recording? Like, are you kidding
Yeah.
me? And then the high school age parents are recording their kid and posting all over socials to try
Yep.
to gain attraction for their student athlete to get recruited, and it's like, if you don't do that, like, it's not going to happen. And I'm like,
Right.
what?
Yeah. Then
like
maybe I don't want it to happen because
like
this seems, crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
need to
feel
put
you.
my kids every sport move, like, on Instagram? Really? Like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Like, and it's like, that's a lot of pressure on a parent too, to, like, be that involved. I mean, obviously there's a recruitment process that happens to become a college athlete, of course, and there always has been, but it seems like the ante keeps getting upped.
It does. And that's one of my main concerns is where is our threshold of enoughness, right? Because especially now when we're talking about college sports and we have NIL, name, image, likeness, and we have the transfer portal, and now it's very typical for incoming student athletes, meaning freshmen entering college, to have agents. So the recruiting process is no longer happening with a coach sitting in a family's living room having a conversation. It's happening through third parties, and it's largely about, chasing the bag and like getting the greatest financial return for, or it's limited by resource, allocation across sports. So it's just, I fear that we're getting away from the the joy, the value, the experience of what sports has been and could be for so many young people, not just, the 2% or 1% that might go pro with their college career after high school. It is a lot. And I'm worried that if we don't slow down, if we don't find a ceiling, if we don't strike, I don't want to say a balance, but just a blend of, what is realistic, what is optimal, what is really in service of young athletes, and what's not. Um, and you think about those parents, it's like, yeah, they're capturing all those highlight moments and posting them. And doing so is also taking them out of being present with their child in that moment of competition. It's like, man, I mean, my daughters are 5 and 3, but I would much rather watch them play than record them playing and then be posting about them playing and miss some of the game because I'm so concerned about making sure that everyone sees this one moment from my, fifth graders like intramural game.
Well, and also too, it's putting so much pressure at such a young age to perform, and like what happened to like for the love of the game? Like
For
it
fun.
this is
Yes.
like sports are supposed to
Yeah.
be fun. Like
Yes. And that's the other thing. It's stealing the joy. Like when I talk to young people, there's so much pressure. And yes, they love their sport or they loved their sport, but they're loving it less now because it's changed and the focus is no longer on having fun. It's how good can you be? What deal can you find? What stats do you need? And if you're not getting them here, then you need to go somewhere else because you have to get these certain benchmarks if you're going to make anything of yourself. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like this was a game. This started out as a game. Yeah.
And this was before I grew up, before there was club sports. I grew up where you played sports for your town, if you like, which was kind of like,
correctly.
yeah, rec
Yeah.
league, and your high school. And there really was not club sports. And now my both of my kids played club sports. My son stopped after sophomore year because he burnt out of basketball. He
Mm-hmm.
was tired of it. It was too much. Like there were, sometimes 6 or 7 games in a weekend. That's
Yeah.
silly. And my daughter played club sports, played club field hockey, and the recruiting process for college has left the high school for most sports.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I mean, there's a few that still focus on the high school, but it's gone to the club team, which means
Yep.
so the club team is now, and which is a business, right? And
Yes.
so
Yes.
the
And
people
club
running these
directors or
businesses,
coaches are like the gatekeepers for access, right? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Pseudo
so it's
agents.
like,
Yep.
so you said, people have like freshmen come in with agents, but many kids have sort of quasi agents in the club
Their
that they are
parents.
playing
Yeah.
for. And so then there's like jockeying for position within the club and transferring club, and there's politics around all of that.
Yep.
And it's money driven.
And it
Yes.
sucks all the joy out of it, even as a parent, because then you've got to
Yes.
navigate all the
Yes.
politics. Like that is the last thing I want to do on a sports field.
Absolutely. And when you said like it sucks the joy out of it, I thought you were just going to stop with it sucks because it does. Like it sucks. It sucks for the kid. It sucks for the parents. It sucks financially. Like it just, and this is where and I think sports are wonderful and I love the coaching profession
Yes.
and gosh, I love my time as an athlete. And that's where my passion and frustration both come from is I worry that we are losing those things. Like when kids are in the locker room, let's say in college now, and even though they're not supposed to be having these conversations with each other, they're sharing, what are you getting paid? What are you getting paid? And the cost to have a McDonald's All-American on your roster as a freshman before they've ever played in a college game means that sometimes they're making more money than someone who has been in the program for 3 years and is an All-American at the college level. And we're not talking about like, hey, can you show me how to do that move? Or like, that was a really cool shot. We're not talking about like how hard practice was today. We're talking about how much money are you making? And we're 17, 18, 19. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. So I have some qualms.
So that we've got, 17, 18, 19 developmentally, like they are
That's the other
still,
thing. Yeah. Okay.
like
Okay,
those brains
psychologist.
are
Like, let's
not
talk about this.
cooked,
Correct.
like
Correct. Yes.
they are not finished developing.
Yeah.
And what I say about teenagers is they listen to the loudest need, not the highest priority need. That's
Mm,
nature of the beast. Like they scratch the itch that feels the most in front of them. And like when we're
yeah.
talking about with our kids, like in front of, in our households, that can mean if you confront your child and their loudest need is get mom off my back, they'll
Mm,
lie to you.
Yeah.
And or they'll just tell you, oh, I did that work, because like, phew, that conflict goes away. Now the highest priority need may be actually make up that schoolwork you missed, or
yeah.
don't make this situation worse by lying, right? But they will listen to the loudest need, which is the one that's right in front of them. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's who you're getting. And if we've got this culture of, and of course not every college athletic experience is tainted by NIL or money, but a lot of it is. They're at risk for listening to the loudest need,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not always the best one to listen to.
Yeah, well, and related to that, when you just said, not every college is tainted by NIL, the transfer portal, even if, let's say, we have a college or a college program that isn't, what I am seeing with far greater frequency, and that's part of why I wrote the book Kids These Days, is if parents and or players, or even just one or two parents or players, are dissatisfied with their child's sport experience, they currently have greater power than ever before to be able to mount a campaign, to weaponize language that triggers an investigation. And even if nothing is found, no wrongdoing on the part of the coach, now that coach often does not want to stay in that environment because they feel like they've lost the trust of their players. That's an uphill battle. So whether it's through, we found something, or we are threatening, legal action if you, athletic director, don't take our concerns seriously and remove this coach because my child hasn't had the experience we were expecting to have. Like, there is so much weighing in on, again, that sport environment that has nothing to do with the actual sport. And it's challenging for everybody. And oftentimes, to your point of, 17, 18, 19, like, we are not fully cooked yet as far as like your prefrontal cortex is not yet fully formed. And yet you unknowingly or without great consideration have dramatically changed the trajectory of an adult's life because you were part of an investigation that, it felt like, yeah, we should get a new coach because this isn't fun. And now that person needs to pack up their family and change jobs because you weren't happy. But we never had a discussion about, what you could do to influence or change the experience you were having. We never had a conversation about whose responsibility is happiness. You never gave that person an opportunity to meet or exceed your expectations. You only complained to parents or administrators, and then the ball keeps rolling, and all of a sudden, it becomes a steamroller, and that's really hard for athletes, for parents, and for coaches.
So, what are some of your recommendations? Well, first of all, what are your observations about kids these days? Let's begin with that. And then the second
Yeah,
question, which I'll ask at some point, is what what do you advise kids, athletes, teammates, and parents do to keep communication sane and
yeah.
civil?
I was going to say, sane and civil would be a goal. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, provide the direct path there. But what I'm observing broadly is, and again, I'm an elder millennial, so I was born in 1983. The unique hallmark of today's athletes, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, is their generations have never known life without the internet. Like, Gen Alpha will never know life without AI. And even though as older or different generational cohorts, so I experienced the changes in technology at the same time that today's young people did. But the period in our development when we experienced them, the context of our world when we experienced them was very different. Like, I still had a largely outdoor play based childhood, which is very different from many of today's young people who had a screen based childhood. And so, what I see often is, especially from older generations, a lot of judgment, a lot of criticism around kids these days. And part of what I strive to do with the book is to help create greater understanding, to replace judgment with understanding. Because when we can start to understand that it's not that kids these days don't want to do certain things, it's that they, because of the context and timing of the world they grew up in, because of technology, they haven't had the same opportunities to get reps in certain skills that were much more innate for previous generations. So things like face-to-face communication, like when I was growing up, you could call someone, you could write them a letter, or you could talk to them face to face. That was it. That was it for a
Mhm.
portion of my life. And it's like, you couldn't text them, you couldn't slide into the DMs, you couldn't even leave them a voicemail. Like, so it's like, okay,
Old
answering
school
machine has now become
answering
voicemail,
machine,
and
Betsy.
it went from on a table to in our pocket. So much has changed, and I think where I see more barriers than bridges is when people make a judgment about a young person and then they don't take it as an opportunity to help develop a skill or to help that individual learn. They just criticize them for not being what they think they should be because, well, I have these skills. Well, why don't you have these skills? Well, I experienced the same thing as you. You did, but you didn't. And so, if we hope to reach today's young people, or if to teach them, we first need to be able to reach them. And so that's really what so much of kids these days is about. Yes, it's in a a sports context. It's meant specifically for coaches. I cannot tell you the number of parents that have come up to me after sessions and said, I know that was meant for coaches, but as a parent, like I now understand my kid better. I have an adapted version specifically for educators because everything that we're talking about, these small shifts, are instrumental in creating the connection that optimizes the skill development, the learning, the elevation of today's young people, that starts to fill in that gap of what they didn't get because of technology so that they are better prepared to face the world that is going to come at them hard. And you see, like, because of that, oh, insulated because of technology. So now we've got this cohort of parents that are fiercely defending and protecting and, clearing the path for their child. And I always think about that quote in education of our job is to prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. And so we are very much in this kind of like pendulum swing of overcorrection and now course correction, but at the detriment and cost to many of today's young people who truly do not feel they have the skills and abilities to advocate for themselves, who feel that life is happening to them in or out of a sport experience versus having greater agency and ownership of their life experience. So there's a lot going on that's really challenging.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, there's so much about what you just said that I want to pick at. One of them is you said there's small changes that we can make to better reach this generation of kids and teach them the skills they need. What's an example?
Yeah. So an example would be, and I'll back up to say, there is a felt need across older generations, whether it's educators, coaches specifically, to like lower our standards or expectations in order to work well with today's young people. And that's simply not true. One, that would be doing a disservice to them because lowering our standards or expectations does not help them build skill and capacity. Also, it's likely out of the individual's integrity, whoever's lowering their standards or expectations. So one small shift anybody can make. An example would be co-creation. Like if I'm often asked, if there's one tool that you could, advise people to lean into, because technology has allowed young people from a very early age to customize so many elements of their life, that same expectation, though often unspoken, comes into their sport experience, their educational experience. So as the person curator in charge of that experience, finding opportunities intentionally to involve them in the co-creation of their experience. So it's no longer, let's say in a sports context, a coach saying, okay, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it and why we're going to do it. And I'm in charge. No, you would be much better served and have a better quality experience to involve them in some of those pieces. So there are certain things, absolutely, that a coach will always be responsible that are not on the table for or open to discussion and influence. And there's also other things, small things, like if we're going to warm up for a game, most coaches I've met want their athletes appropriately warmed up to train or compete. How that happens, you might be more flexible with. So if there's a menu of like 7 different warm-up drills you might do on any given day, maybe you pick one and then you let the team pick the other one. Or maybe if, let's say we're in college, coach picks one, freshmen have Monday, sophomores Tuesday, juniors Wednesday, seniors Thursday, and then we're going to do a new drill we've never done on Friday. Like small things that allow them to have some ownership, some agency, some say in the way that they experience their sport environment. So co-creation would be one shift, just finding ways intentionally to invite them to be an active part of the process, whatever that process looks like, depending on what role you play.
That builds trust in a team. I mean,
What's
that
that?
right there, that builds trust in a team.
Well, that's one of the things that this generation values so much. Again, related to technology, they've been able to Google anything at any time and get information. Now, the validity of that information, we can debate all day, but they can get information. And so they value transparency.
Yes.
They value authenticity. They value being part of a process because technology has allowed them to have that access at their fingertips whenever they want. Something I hear commonly, and I'll ask this question in a live workshop, I'll say, by show of hands, how many of you have had a young person ask you a question that in some way felt like a challenge to your knowledge or authority? So many hands go up.
Yes.
And the eyes roll, right? It's like, these assholes, right? And I'm like, okay, I hear you. And it's not meant to be disrespectful. They're simply executing a very well practiced skill. They're using you like Google. And Google never says, that was an inappropriate tone, Betsy, or I don't appreciate the timing of your question. It just spits back information. And so they're executing a well-practiced skill. They want to know. And it's up to us as people who care about them to start to teach them why the timing of their question, the tone of their question may not be well received by somebody who doesn't know them as well. Because I would much rather be able to provide them with that feedback in a caring relationship, in a known relationship, than have them go out into the world in an environment that doesn't care for them or know them and have them have a similar experience and then
And
wonder
that
what
might
happened.
sound like, and I'm thinking, you said, parents come up to you, and I work with parents, and
Yeah,
and that's, I'm thinking, your kids do this to you all the time. It's not just athletes asking coaches, right? Kids do this to
100%.
parents asking they're Googling you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can say, I call this narrating. Like, you could say, here's how that landed with me right now. I'm confident that wasn't your intention. Or
Right.
I'm going to assume that wasn't your intention, which is giving kids the benefit
Yeah.
of the doubt. And then,
Yeah.
first of all, even if it was their intention, if you give them the assumption that it wasn't, they get the chance to walk that back if they choose to, or some will
Mm-hmm.
double down and pick a fight. But
Yeah.
with,
But they have a choice. You're giving them
yeah,
a
they have a
choice.
choice, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to
Yes.
assume that wasn't your intention. But something you should know is, when you ask that question, it felt sort
Yeah.
of persecutey, or it
Yes.
felt like you were trying to poke a hole and, like,
It's
catch me
giving
in the act of
persecution. Yeah.
catch me in the act of, like, not knowing something and looking foolish. Is
Yeah.
that what you were going for? Right.
Yeah.
And if you ask it in a way that's like, or you could say, I assume that's not what you were going for. Right. Which is
And that's what you're pointing to, Sam, for me, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like awareness is a prerequisite for change. People
yes.
of any age, not just young people of any age are very unlikely to change what they're not first aware of. And so the way that you're phrasing that, like, I'm going to assume that wasn't your intention, you're inviting them to reflect, which is creating awareness. And from a place of awareness, they now get to make more informed choices.
Yes. I always say that, there's 5 stages to change. They go like this: pre-contemplation. This isn't, I didn't make this up. This is from motivational interviewing.
Yes.
Pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action, maintenance, and sometimes relapse. So there's 5.5. And oftentimes, as adults with young people, we come in at planning or action. We, like, tell
Yes.
them how they need to be,
100%.
or
Yes.
what's going to happen, or this is what you need to do. And they are at pre-contemplation. They
Yes.
like, it hasn't occurred to them that a change could occur, or something that they're doing is not the best way to do it, or how they're being is not the best way to be. So when we enter assuming that they don't know, we are dignifying where they are, and they don't feel nagged and dragged. They feel like, oh, now I have insight. And more than half the time, kids will make the change that we're hoping to see when we enter where they are.
Well, and
Yes.
Sam, in the sports world, think about the parents that, like, kind of, like, force their kid into a sport. Like, maybe it's a sport they played and, like, they excelled at, and it's like, well, I was a lacrosse player. We're in Maryland, Betsy, so
Yeah.
lacrosse
Yeah.
is, like, the hottest thing. Like, and it's like, I was a lacrosse player. I played in college, so, like, here's a lacrosse stick at 3 years of age because you need to, follow in mommy or daddy's footsteps and play lacrosse. And, like, there can be, like, that parent can have planned out the next 15 years of a kid's life in a sport that they might hate.
And I'll say, as a parent myself, and my daughter did play a sport that I played, and I will say that some of this is likely subconscious. Like, I introduced something, I'm like, this was fun for me. So, like, you
Good
could give this
intention,
world,
positive
right, good
intention. Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
And at some point, we as parents may be in pre-contemplation. Like, oh, to what extent am I zooming out and really looking at whether this is fulfilling for my child, or is this a me thing? And I'll share a story. I told you my son burnt out, right? He was playing AAU basketball on a team that was, like, a really fun group of people to be with on the weekend. So he liked his teammates, and I really liked hanging out with the parents. Like, they grew to be,
You will play
like,
the sport because I have friends. Yes.
that's kind of what it was. Like, they
Yeah.
grew to be a set of, like unlikely friends that we all got together on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, that's who I spent those 7 games with most weekends. And when he was burning out, my husband said to me, I think this may be his last year of basketball. And I was kind of like, oh no, you're wrong. You're predicting. My husband, when he was dead on. He's like, I think I see him not thriving. And I didn't want it to end. And of
Yeah.
course I didn't stop him, but I didn't I don't know, I probably didn't create as much space as I could have for him to be thinking about whether basketball should be over, because I had some skin in the game and it was utterly mine, not his at all. And my
Yeah.
husband did a much better job than I did. And he quit basketball and he was so much happier afterwards. He was so much happier. It was the right move for him. And I miss those
Yeah.
parents still.
Yeah. Well, and if they're listening, Sam says hi. Yes, she thinks of you often. It's so much of I'm listening as both of you are talking, and Sam, you mentioned it earlier when you're talking about motivational interviewing, and even now, like I didn't leave as much space or create as much space because I had some skin in the game, and that's another one of those small shifts that makes a big difference. Is we have to. I shouldn't say that. You don't have to. It would be to your benefit and to that of your children, your athletes, etc., to ask more than you tell. And you mentioned it's like we're telling them we're entering at this stage and they're still in precognition, right? Like we need to stop telling. We need to do more asking. And and then I'll get the pushback of like, okay, Betsy, but I asked my team a question and nobody answers, right? It's not that they don't know. It's that they value so highly the peer relationship that they are afraid of how their answer will be judged in that space if they speak first. Are they teacher's pet? If they stutter when they speak, are they going to be made fun of by their peers? You know, it's like, it's not that they don't know. And there's a variety of ways to facilitate getting that information or have like helping them start to have those conversations in that space. But we have to stop telling as much as we tell. And I was talking with the director of US youth golf, and I'm doing a session with them in June out in Pinehurst here in North Carolina. And he said, Betsy, the big challenge for us is that so many coaches in golf are coaching kids out of the game at a very early age. But it doesn't just impact that kid. It's a generational issue because when that 6-year-old who has a golf coach who just talks at him and ruins the love of the game that's emerging, that 6-year-old quits golf. And then when that 6-year-old becomes a parent and their kid says, hey, what's golf? They're like, oh, you don't want to try golf. And so he said, we're missing out on 2 generations of kids getting into or staying into the game of golf with one bad experience. And that's the impact. So it's like coaches are coaching themselves, coaching kids out of sport. Again, their intention is positive often. I want to teach you what I know. I want to tell you what I know. And whether it's information or feedback, like so many kids these days, they're completely uninterested in your feedback until they first know unequivocally that you have their back. Like what they want is the relationship. And I tell this to coaches all the time, like any of your athletes can hop on the internet and in a few minutes learn a new skill or drill. The one thing they can't get from the internet and from technology is a human connection with you, their coach. So let's focus on that. Like, let's start with connection, and connection happens through communication. So if we can connect first, there's so much more that's possible than if we come in trying to tell and to teach right away, but we've missed the opportunity to first connect.
Oh,
I
you're
love
singing
that.
my song. That's
I
what
love
that's, this is why
Well,
this is why I loved Betsy from the get-go. This is why my daughter was like, you should meet my mom. And then she called me, she's like, you should
yeah.
meet Betsy, right? Because this is I just cannot say how that hit me right in the heart in all the good in all the right ways. I love
I'm
it.
getting
Thank
like,
you.
I'm thinking back to like years of playing sports, and like the things that will stand out are either the really good or the really negative.
100%. Yes. And I'll ask this
And I
question
can name
often
those
too.
people still.
I was going to say, so yes, when I ask, and it's a neutral question, right? Like, what's something that a coach said to you during your athletic career that you've never forgotten? Now, it's a neutral question. I'm not influencing which direction it goes. And over 70% of people who've answered that question tell me something that was critical
Yeah.
or said in an emotional or flippant moment by a coach one time when they were playing youth sports that they have never forgotten. And they're
Getting
now
lots of
25,
flashbacks
30.
right now.
Yes. And sometimes I'll get the positive one, right? But it's like, gosh, we have an immense amount of influence. And that's the opening in the dedication in the book. It was, while it's not your responsibility, you have an incredible opportunity as a coach to impact a life for the rest of that life. And
Oh,
I
like
love
I
it.
hold that as sacred, so it's like our words matter, like our our ability to connect or our lack of ability to connect, the importance of withholding judgment and in its place presenting with curiosity. Even if we find out we were right, okay, but let's just give them a shot first, yeah, there's just so much that is within our control when so many things feel out of control. Even the parents screaming on the sideline. I mean, that's where this episode started, right? It's like, yeah, I don't control those parents, but I can control how my kid sees me on the sideline. Or the number of coaches are like, Betsy, how do I get a kid that's now in college to stop looking into the stands at their parents every time they make a mistake or every time they do something good? And it's like, yeah, we got to start reshaping some behavior, some relationships so that we can give that kid what their parents say they want, which is, I want them to be happy. I want them to be successful. Great. So let's teach them how to be autonomous. Let's give them the skills to take ownership of their successes and failures without your approval or disapproval.
And that is lesson that goes, as we said in the intro, well beyond sport.
Way beyond sport.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Betsy, you mentioned before we started recording that that there's a way to access Kids These Days at a discount. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So there'll be a link in the show notes. If anyone is interested in purchasing the book Kids These Days, whether you are a coach yourself or you're a parent volunteer, whether you have a coach that you know, if you're trying to understand your kids better, as I mentioned before, like, yes, it's a sports context, but it's also for parents. It's also for educators of any kind. And I see coaches as educators. So if you'd like to get a discount on the book, you can do so via the link. It's also available on Amazon, but without the discount. They don't let me give you that discount code. And then if you're an audiobook listener, it's available on all major platforms. Again, I don't have a discount link for that, but I know some people prefer to listen in the spaces between than read. So whatever your jam, take it, make it yours. If it can be of benefit, I would love to help you get there. So thank you.
And the book again is Kids These Days, Effective Strategies for Coaching Gen Z and Beyond by Betsy Butterick.
Betsy, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to have you. I know we could go on probably for hours.
Yes. Likewise.
But for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Parenting Shrink Wrap. We love you. We love your kids. And thank you for raising the next generation of world changers.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride called parenthood here at Parenting Shrink Wrapped. We hope today's episode gave you some useful tools and maybe even a few laughs to help you navigate the twists and turns of raising teens and kids.
Remember, parenting is a journey, not a destination. And no matter where you are on the road, we're here to help you stay on course. Whether it's monumental meltdowns, teenage turmoil, or just the everyday chaos, you don't have to travel this path alone.
So until next time, keep your seatbelt fastened, your sense of humor intact, and your eyes on the road. We'll be back soon with more compassionate conversations and practical strategies to support you and your family.
Don't forget to subscribe to Parenting Shrink Wrapped wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today's show, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review and share it with a friend.
If you have suggestions for topics you'd like to see us cover in the future, feel free to send us an email at parentingshrinkwrapped@gmail.com.
Until we meet again, take care and enjoy the ride.